Australia, ranked 38th in the world by FIFA, will be heading to the desert for their 6th World Cup finals. The Socceroos always bring the heart and the desire for the badge, and I'm looking forward to some magic from down under this time around. They would make their debut in Germany, 1974. The only tournament to be played in a nation divided as it was, the Australians brought a team of amateurs and were drawn somehow against both sides of the German conflict and the men from Chile. Seems a bit suspicious that East and West Germany ended up in the same group, and perhaps not coincidentally, both would qualify for the round of 16. The Australians didn't manage to record a single goal versus seriously tough opposition, but did manage to eke out a 0-0 versus the Chileans to salvage some pride on their first adventure at the world stage. They would not qualify again until the tournament was held in the same place as the last time they appeared in the world's biggest tournament. Drawn into a tough group in Germany 2006, the Australians had a considerably better go of it this time around. The Japanese would push them to the very end, where the legend Tim Cahill bagged a 5-minute brace, with another being added not 3 minutes later to secure the win, the very first one for Australia at the World Cup, not to mention the first goals they've ever scored. This famous win was followed by disappointment in the hands of the Brazilians, but Brazil handed out disappointment to many at the World Cup. This would leave them in a match versus Croatia, who always bring their best to the world stage, in what would go down as one of the most famous nights in Australian footballing history, before a raucous sea of green and yellow, dare I say a gladiators bout ensued. A second-minute dagger from the Europeans was cancelled out on the stroke of halftime from the penalty spot. Then calamity struck as the goalkeeper has a moment of madness on what looks like a routine stop. It takes a bobble and bounces awkwardly over him and trickles into the net to send Niko Kovac and the Croatians into dreamland. Needing only a draw to advance, the Australians turned up the heat and found their equalizer in the 78th minute. I seriously got chills watching the highlights of this one, because at 2-2, the round of 16 was in reach and desperation would spill over. Yellow cards galore. Emerton gets 2 in 6 minutes and is sent off literally 1 minute after Simic on the other side gets his second yellow and is given his marching orders as well. As if that wasn't enough, Simic, who had received his first yellow in the 61st minute, would go on to pick up 2 more yellows, and somehow was only shown the red after his 3rd yellow of the game. Needless to say, the final whistle was greeted with euphoria from all in yellow, and I'm not sure if they've taken a deep enough breath to calm down from this one still today. In another wild match, they would face the Italians in the round of 16. Despite playing with a man advantage for 40 minutes of the game, a soul-crushing penalty was awarded to the eventual champions in the 95th minute. Francisco Totti wasn't about to miss such a gift, and the Aussies went home decimated, but proud of their return to the world's grandest stage. 4 years later in South Africa, the draw was particularly tough once more for the Australians, making their 2nd consecutive appearance at the finals. Tim Cahill's red card didn't help against the Germans, nor did Harry Kewell's against Ghana, but they were able to hold out for a draw at least versus the Africans. A great display versus the Serbians in the final match saw them record a 2-1 victory, but the damage was done in the first game, and they bowed out on goal difference. Down in Brazil, 2014, the Socceroos were back, and it was a particularly memorable and notable tournament because of their performances over the 3 games. I remember distinctly all 3 of them. Despite the 3-1 scoreline versus Chile, I thought that the Aussies had a strong performance and the result was slightly misleading. Then the Dutch powerhouse came next in an absolute thriller of a game. Arguably the greatest Australian goal that's ever been scored off the boot of Timmy Cahill, like an absolute laser beam to cancel out an Arjen Robben opener only seconds before. For those of you who never saw this man in an Everton shirt, this ranks as the best goal of his career by far. I would agree only because of the stage he did it on. An incredible goal that's still rated as one of the best ever in the World Cup. A 54th minute penalty would see the Aussies ahead, but only for 4 minutes as the Flying Dutchman himself equalized and Memphis Depay would secure the win 10 minutes later for the Dutch. What a game this was, adding to the incredible entertainment the Australians provided down in Brazil. Another misleading scoreline in their third game saw them give up 3 goals to the Spanish, but I felt that they definitely had another strong performance. On the whole, they should be proud of their showing in 2014, and I still feel like the picture on the surface was incredibly misleading. They played 3 very strong teams and fought like gladiators, showing the pride that can only come from having the badge of one's nation stitched on your jersey. Last time out was far more underwhelming than the tournament before, being drawn against eventual champions France. They managed to scrape out a 1-1 versus the Danish, but falling in a shock defeat at the hands of Peru. The entire time, they would only net twice, both times from the penalty spot, before being sent home in honestly disappointing fashion given the showing they had had 4 years before in Brazil. But the Socceroos are back in Qatar for this tournament in a group that looks hauntingly similar to the opponents from Russia 4 years ago. The Australians have a tough road against France, Tunisia, and then Denmark. It's clear that they need to beat Tunisia to give them a chance to qualify from their third game against Denmark, because getting anything from the French juggernaut will take a Herculean performance. But it's the World Cup, the biggest stage with the entire planet watching. A time for dreams, a time for hope, a time for champions to rise to the top. We can only hope the Socceroos can channel the spirit of Timmy Cahill, 4-time World Cup participant, and heroes such as Mile Jedinak and Mark Brasciano, tied with Cahill for the most World Cup appearances, and entertain as they did 8 years ago in less than a month's time.